The first piece of evidence in the case was not a witness statement or a police report. It was a silent recording from a hallway security camera. May 14, 2024, 6:58 p.m. The camera, mounted high near the ceiling of an apartment hallway, shows a young couple walking toward apartment 3C. The hallway lighting is dim and warm, casting long shadows along the walls. The woman is 24 years old, holding a small set of keys while smiling slightly as she unlocks the door. Her name is Maya Bennett. Walking beside her is her boyfriend, Adrian Cole, 27 years old. The two appear relaxed. Maya pushes the door open and steps inside while Adrian follows behind her. For a moment they pause in the doorway, exchanging a few quiet words before the door closes. At the time, nothing about the footage seemed unusual. It looked like an ordinary evening. But less than 40 hours later, that same apartment would become the center of a homicide investigation. The discovery happened on the morning of May 16th. Maya Bennett failed to arrive at the marketing firm where she worked. At first, her coworkers assumed she might simply be sick or taking a personal day. But when she didn't respond to calls or messages throughout the afternoon, concern began to grow. By evening, one of her colleagues contacted the building management to request a welfare check. The building superintendent used a master key to open Maya's apartment door. The silence inside immediately felt strange. The living room lights were still on. Maya's phone was resting on the kitchen counter. A half-finished glass of water sat on the coffee table. But near the hallway leading toward the bedroom, Maya Bennett was lying motionless on the floor. Police were called within minutes. When officers entered the apartment, they quickly confirmed Maya had been dead for many hours before she was discovered. There were signs of a struggle in the living room. A chair had been pushed sideways. A decorative lamp lay broken on the floor near the wall, yet nothing appeared stolen. Her wallet, phone, and laptop were all still inside the apartment. There was also something investigators immediately noticed. The front door showed no signs of forced entry, which meant whoever had entered that apartment that night was someone Maya likely trusted enough to open the door for. Detectives began reconstructing Maya's final evening using the building's security cameras. The hallway camera outside apartment 3C provided the first major clue. At 6:58 p.m., the footage showed Maya arriving home with Adrian Cole. For the next 38 minutes, nothing happened in the hallway. Then, at 7:36 p.m., the same camera recorded Adrian leaving the apartment alone. He stepped out calmly, closed the door behind him, and walked toward the elevator without looking back. From that moment forward, Maya Bennett was never seen alive again. Naturally, Adrian became the first person investigators wanted to speak with. When detectives contacted him, he agreed to come in for questioning. During the interview, Adrian appeared nervous but cooperative. According to his statement, he had simply stopped by Maya's apartment after work to spend some time with her. He explained that they talked for a while before he left, because he had plans to meet friends later that night. When detectives asked whether they had argued, Adrian quickly shook his head. "No," he said. Everything was normal. At that stage, there was little evidence to contradict him, but investigators soon discovered something unusual inside the apartment. Maya's laptop had been left open on the couch in the living room. The screen showed several browser tabs discussing recently circulating Epstein investigation files, which had become widely discussed online. Articles, forums, and comment threads filled the page. Detectives initially assumed Maya had simply been reading the news. But when digital analysts reviewed the browser history, they noticed something strange. So multiple searches had been made combining Maya's name with discussions about the Epstein Files. Even more interesting was the time those searches had been performed. They had not been made late at night. They had been made earlier that same afternoon. When investigators examined Adrian's phone and laptop, they found the same searches. During a second interview, Adrian admitted he had seen a discussion online mentioning Maya's name in connection with rumors tied to the Epstein Files. He said the post shocked him. Curious and confused, he spent several hours searching the internet to see whether the rumor had any truth behind it. Later that evening, when he visited Maya's apartment, he asked her about it. According to Adrian, Maya immediately denied the rumors and said the internet often spreads misinformation. Adrian told detectives he believed her explanation and left shortly afterward. But investigators were not completely convinced, because if the conversation about the Epstein Files had turned into an argument, it could have escalated into something much worse. For several days, Adrian Cole remained the primary suspect. But as detectives continued examining the timeline of Maya Bennett's final evening, they began to notice something that didn't quite fit. Because if Adrian had truly left at 7:36 p.m., someone else may have come to the apartment afterward. And that possibility would soon lead investigators toward a completely different suspect. The investigation began to grow more complicated as detectives continued examining the timeline of Maya Bennett's final evening. At first, everything pointed directly toward Adrian Cole. He had been the last person seen entering the apartment with Maya, and the discussion about the Epstein Files had clearly created tension between them. For several days, detectives focused heavily on Adrian, reviewing his phone records, speaking with the friends he claimed to meet later that night, and studying every second of surveillance footage from the building. But the deeper investigators looked, the more uncertain the timeline became. Forensic examiners estimated that Maya had died sometime between 7:50 p.m. and 8:20 p.m. That time window created a problem. Adrian had already been recorded leaving the building at 7:36 p.m. Phone tower data also showed his phone connecting to a tower several miles away shortly before 8 o'clock. While this didn't completely eliminate him as a suspect, it created doubt. Detectives began asking a new question. If Adrian had truly left the apartment alive and unharmed, who had come to see Maya afterward? The answer slowly began to emerge from an unexpected place: Northbridge University, where Maya had been studying for her graduate degree. When detectives interviewed several of her classmates, they heard about an uncomfortable moment that had happened only 2 days before Maya died. During a lecture, a student named Kevin Walters had shown something on his phone to a few students nearby. It was a screenshot from an online discussion connected to the Epstein Files. In the middle of the conversation thread, Maya's name appeared in a comment posted by an anonymous user. Within minutes, the screenshot spread around the classroom. Some students whispered about it quietly. Others treated it like a joke. But the situation became much more serious for one particular person sitting in that room: Maya's older brother, Daniel Bennett. Daniel was also a student at the same university. According to several witnesses, Kevin eventually sent the screenshot directly to Daniel's phone while making a joke about the rumor. Students sitting nearby later told detectives that Daniel stared at the image for several seconds without speaking. Then his expression changed. One student remembered that Daniel looked extremely angry. Another said he slammed his notebook shut before standing up and leaving the classroom without saying a word. At the time, most students assumed it was simply an embarrassing rumor. But detectives soon discovered something else. Phone records showed that shortly after leaving that lecture, Daniel began searching the same online discussions about the Epstein Files and Maya's name. His browsing activity continued for hours that afternoon, as if he was trying to confirm whether the rumor was real. Then, investigators found something that changed the direction of the case. On the night Maya died, Daniel's phone briefly connected to a cell tower covering the neighborhood where her apartment building was located. The connection happened at 8:05 p.m. That was inside the same time window investigators believed Maya had been killed. At first, Daniel denied visiting his sister that evening. When detectives questioned him, he said he had simply been driving through the area on his way to meet a friend, but investigators kept looking. Across the street from Maya's building was a small convenience store with a security camera pointed toward the parking lot. When detectives reviewed the footage, they noticed a car pulling into a nearby parking space around 8:12 p.m. The vehicle matched the color and model of Daniel Bennett's car. Moments later, a man stepped out of the vehicle and walked toward the rear entrance of Maya's apartment building. That entrance led to a stairwell that had no camera coverage, which meant someone could enter the building without appearing on the hallway security cameras. Suddenly, the timeline looked very different. Adrian had left the apartment, and shortly afterward, someone else had arrived. When detectives brought Daniel in for questioning again, they were no longer asking whether he had visited Maya that night. Now, they wanted to know what happened after he got there. When detectives brought Daniel Bennett in for questioning again, the atmosphere inside the interrogation room was noticeably different from the first time they had spoken to him. During the earlier interview, the questions had been cautious and exploratory. Now, the investigators already had a timeline that was beginning to make sense. They placed several photographs and printed reports on the table in front of Daniel. One by one, they walked him through the sequence of events. First, the incident inside the lecture hall at Northbridge University. Multiple students had confirmed that a screenshot connected to online discussions about the Epstein Files had been shown during class. The image contained Maya Bennett's name in the middle of a comment thread posted by anonymous users. Detectives explained that Kevin Walters had admitted sending that same screenshot directly to Daniel's phone during the lecture. Then they described what happened afterward. Phone records showed Daniel had spent several hours that afternoon searching the same discussions online. Page after page of rumors, speculation, and arguments about the Epstein Files appeared in his browsing history. The searches continued well into the evening, as if he was trying desperately to confirm whether the rumors had any truth behind them. Next, the detectives placed another image on the table. It was a still frame from the convenience store security camera across the street from Maya's apartment building. The picture was grainy, but the outline of a car pulling into the parking area at 8:12 p.m. was clearly visible. The vehicle matched the color and model of Daniel's car. Investigators then explained that the man seen stepping out of that car had walked directly toward the rear entrance of the building, an entrance connected to a stairwell that had no camera coverage. That meant someone entering through that door could reach Maya's apartment without ever appearing on the hallway surveillance camera. Finally, detectives described the time window in which Maya was believed to have died. Adrian Cole had been recorded leaving the apartment at 7:36 p.m. The estimated time of death placed the fatal incident sometime between 7:50 p.m. and 8:20 p.m., right inside the same time frame when Daniel's car appeared near the building. For several seconds, the room remained completely silent. Daniel stared down at the table. His hands were clasped tightly together, as if he was trying to steady himself. When one of the detectives finally asked whether he had gone to Maya's apartment that evening, Daniel did not answer immediately. Then slowly, he nodded. He admitted that he had gone there. According to Daniel, the moment in the university classroom had stayed with him for the rest of the day. When Kevin showed him the screenshot connecting Maya's name to rumors about the Epstein Files, several students began whispering and laughing. Even though Daniel understood that online discussions were often filled with misinformation, the humiliation he felt in that moment was overwhelming. He said he could feel everyone in the room watching him. To Daniel, it felt like his sister's name, and by extension his family, had been dragged into something ugly and public. After leaving the classroom, he began searching the internet, trying to understand why Maya's name had appeared in those discussions. The more he searched, the angrier he became. Some posts claimed to have seen her name mentioned somewhere online. Others repeated the rumor without evidence, but none of it gave him a clear answer. By the evening, Daniel said he convinced himself that the only way to deal with the situation was to confront Maya directly. Around 8 p.m., he drove to her apartment building. Instead of entering through the main hallway, Daniel used the rear stairwell entrance that he already knew about from previous visits. That stairwell allowed him to reach the third floor without passing the hallway camera that had recorded Adrian leaving earlier. When Maya opened the door and saw him standing there, she looked surprised but not afraid. According to Daniel, she asked him what was wrong. He immediately showed her the screenshot. Daniel told detectives that Maya looked confused and frustrated when she saw it. She explained that rumors like that often spread on the internet without context. She insisted she had nothing to do with the discussions about the Epstein Files, and that her name had likely been added to the conversation by someone who didn't know the truth. But Daniel admitted that by that point he was too angry to listen. The argument escalated quickly. Daniel demanded to know why her name was appearing in those rumors at all. Maya repeated that the internet often spreads misinformation and told him he was overreacting to something that clearly had no evidence behind it. At one point, she tried to walk away from the conversation. Daniel said that was when he grabbed her arm. He admitted that he pushed her during the struggle. The push happened quickly in the middle of the argument. Maya lost her balance and fell backward near the hallway floor. Daniel told detectives that he immediately realized something was wrong when she didn't get up. For several seconds he stood there frozen, staring at her. At first, he thought she had simply been knocked unconscious. But when she didn't respond, panic began to take control of his thinking. Instead of calling for help, Daniel said fear overwhelmed him. He imagined police investigations, the rumors spreading further across the university, and the situation becoming a public scandal connected to his family. So he made a decision that would ultimately seal the case. He left. Daniel walked back down the stairwell, exited through the rear door, and drove away from the building. He said he tried to convince himself that Maya might wake up later and that the situation was not as serious as it seemed. But the following day, when news began spreading that Maya had been found dead inside her apartment, Daniel realized the consequences of what had happened. For several days, the investigation focused heavily on Adrian Cole, the boyfriend who had been captured leaving the apartment on the hallway camera. But the deeper detectives looked into the timeline, the more the evidence began pointing somewhere else. In the end, it wasn't the hallway camera that solved the case. It was the chain of events that began with a rumor spreading across the internet, continued through a university classroom, and ended with a confrontation that should never have happened. Maya Bennett's death was not the result of a calculated crime. It was the tragic outcome of a single moment of anger, a moment when her own brother allowed humiliation and rage to control his actions, and that moment changed the lives of everyone involved forever.